All right. Good morning, everyone. Looks like we are live. Hopefully you can hear me okay. If you want to just introduce yourself in the chat, let me know that the audio is coming through just fine. That will help me out here. Looks like everything's looking good on my end. People checking in from all over the state. Hopefully it's a beautiful morning wherever you are. It's a gorgeous one here in Seattle. We're going to get started in about a minute. I did want to point out a couple things in the description to this video. So right down below this video in the description box, if you click on show more, you will see 3 links down there. The first link is a link to this presentation. So if you want to follow along, do a split screen thing on your laptop, you can do that as well. And you can keep that link. It will be there for you to go back and reference this presentation. There are 2 other links there, and we're going to talk about those. Those are PD enroller links that are coming out from AESD, or the Association of Educational Service Districts across our state, who have band together to bring to you administrators and teachers some support between now and June 12th. So we'll be talking about that at the end of this, but hopefully you're getting your audio set up. You got a nice cup of coffee or something ready to set in. This is about an hour presentation. People coming in from all over Washington. So it's great to see you all here this morning. And if you need those links, again, I've got a couple people chatting, a couple moderators in the chat room for you that have helped and supported me through the years. I consider them mentors. We've got some people from Moses Lake and Enumclaw, and I think Tyler's here from Sunnyside in the chat. So feel free, if you have questions about any of the stuff that I'm going over today, feel free to put that in the chat and have a great conversation. I'm not going to be watching the chat because as we know, you can't multitask. So talking and reading at the same time doesn't work, but know that that's there for you to support each other as we go through this presentation. I want to start off by thanking the Association of ESDs, or AESD, here in the state of Washington for putting this together for so quickly over the last 2 weeks. Reaching out, starting with Linda at the North Central ESD, and then really ramping this up across the state and looking at how can we support teachers in schools in our state as we go into this distance learning for the rest of the school year. So it's been an incredible kind of week and a half to get this out to you, but I'm so excited that you've decided to join us today as we kind of look at what is this going, what can we do, and where should you be as a district? And I know that districts are in all different parts in implementing this. So my goal is wherever you're at, you're able to kind of either check off some points and say, yes, we've got that, we're good to go. Or maybe you're going to be able to reflect a little bit and look at, what are some pieces that you're missing that you might want to add. So that's really my focus today. And then hopefully trying to drive us forward on where does this lead, and even thinking about how education is going to look different after this. So that's kind of the idea this morning. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get started. Again, if you want to follow along, that link to this presentation is there in the description. If you click on show more, you should be able to find that there. So we're going to go ahead and get started here this morning. So the first thing I just wanted to do is introduce myself. If you don't know who I am, or you haven't seen me around, my name is Jeff Utak. I was born and raised in Spokane, Washington, graduate of Central Valley High School in Spokane, and graduate of Washington State University in elementary ed. So I have those in my background. I'm very much a Washingtonian. I went to community college first, 2 years at Olympic Community College in Bremerton, and really have enjoyed and just love our state so much. And just really want to give a shout out to every district across this state and the work that you have done to get to this point and to ramp up in this crisis to support our kids. And we'll be talking a lot more about that. But through my travels and just the idea here of once I graduated from WSU, my now wife is a school counselor, and we decided to live overseas for 10 years. And we taught at international schools, and it's there where a lot of my experiences happened that I am now feeding off of here through this crisis to support you. And just some of those, kind of what that looked like, what kind of a little bit of my history here is in 2003, my wife and I were living in Saudi Arabia, and due to terrorism, we had to graduate our first ever senior class, try to figure out how to get those credits to those kids. And you have to think back to 2003, we're talking 56K dial-up modems, no cell phones, no iPads, nothing like that. And we still found a way to get kids graduated and get kids off to college. In 2005, my wife and I were teaching in Shanghai, and due to SARS at the time, we had to ramp up and get ready to go into a virtual school, and we were doing trainings with teachers. We set up a Moodle, if anybody remembers Moodle. It's still around today, but back in the day it was very popular. We never ended up closing school, but we were all ready and had systems in place. In 2009, my wife and I were living in Bangkok, working at an American international school there. And due to flooding in H1N1, we ended up going into virtual school for about a month. So again, setting up systems, thinking about learning in a different way in 2009, sorry. And then in 2011, because of these experiences I had, I was actually brought to Washington, D.C., and got to work with the State Department and some senators there to help set up a global virtual school for international schools, that in case things like this happened, there was a system that they could quickly plug into. And what it really did is it was forced international schools at the time to really think about blended learning, so that in a moment's notice, we could flip the switch. And it's those experiences that I think have really helped to kind of create a system that we know works. We also know, and part of my ability of being able to tap into the network, especially in Asia, where we know those schools are just now, I've just got some emails this morning from friends who are going to be going back to school for the first time since January. So they've been out of school for 10 weeks plus over there. And we're learning so much about what is working and what is not working in this time of crisis. And here's where we need to start. What I want you to understand is our focus throughout this presentation, and the focus that I love that our state has taken, is understanding that first and foremost, before we ever worry about learning or school, we have to meet the psychological and safety needs of our students. And it has been an honor to watch as all of you school districts and teachers have helped to support to get food out to students. I know many of you are still at lunchtime out passing out lunches in parking lots, or riding around on school buses to get food out to families to make sure that they are safe. And we have to start with that. And part of that, even when we move into school, we have to make sure we're fulfilling that. Especially, I'm looking at this idea of love and belonging. We know for many of our students, love and belonging was at school. They are missing school. They are missing their friends, and they're missing their teacher. And how are we supporting those? And we have to remember, we have to fulfill all these needs before we ever worry about school out there. Now, that doesn't mean we don't worry about learning, but this idea of school has really changed. And it really, it's something we have to focus on, but we have to take care of the needs of our students along the way as well, or it's never going to be there. Now, here's what we know, right? Here's what we know. We know, first and foremost, what doesn't work. And here's what we know doesn't work. Expecting learning on day one doesn't work. It's not going to work. Kids are trying to set up a new system. Teachers are trying to set up a new system. So don't expect learning to happen on day one of virtual school. It takes time, and families are in crisis. They're trying to figure out their new normal as well. We also know that doesn't work is digital worksheets, right? Digital worksheets don't work. You can't take a worksheet, turn it into a PDF and put it on Canvas and expect that is going to actually engage students in some new way. We have to remember now that you are now competing with Fortnite and Minecraft and beautiful weather outside here across our state. And so we have to think differently. And that's what this is about. This is about a mental mind shift that we all must make to support our families and kids in this. The other thing we know is doing what you were going to do anyway doesn't work. There is no curriculum that is created for a pandemic. There is no curriculum that is created that in a moment's notice, you can just keep doing what you're going to doing and doing it online. It's not there. It doesn't exist. And so thinking that we can just keep pretending that things are normal is the wrong answer. We have to understand that things have changed, and within that, we have to change with it. And there's a couple blog posts that I wrote that kind of got this thing started. And I actually had one of my goddaughters read the blog post to just say, am I right here? What are you thinking from a kid perspective? She is a sophomore down in the Tri-Cities area. And she wrote me back this text. She's like, yes, please make sure you tell teachers not to overload their students with lots of bookworks and worksheets. And especially our high school kids right now, they are in mourning, right? My goddaughter is mourning the fact, even as a sophomore, she's in band. She is mourning the fact that she will never see those seniors again. She didn't get a chance to say goodbye. And we have to understand that there's a lot of emotion, especially with our teenagers, and we have to support them through that. But as teachers, here's what I'm hoping. As teachers watching this, as school districts watching this, I hope that at some level you understand that you have been unleashed from a curriculum that you might have found to be too rigid. and state tests that you felt might put too much pressure on you and your students. You have been unleashed to rethink what education can look like in this crisis. And on some level, I hope that excites you. In the work that I was doing across the state before the crisis and around the world, I constantly hear from educators that they're feeling like the curriculum is sucking the creativity out of them, that they don't feel like they can be creative anymore in their classrooms. And here's a chance for us, and we need you to be creative. We need to think outside the box. We need to think about doing the things that we know are passionate to kids. That's what's going to engage them in learning moving forward. And I want us to remember the focus that is coming from OSPI. So on April 6th, OSPI released their continuing learning plan. And this is the focus that they are asking us to focus on. They're saying we want teachers to build on each student's strength, interests, and needs, and use this knowledge to positively impact learning. They're not telling us to positively assess learning or to evaluate learning, to impact learning. That's the focus of our state. How are we building on the strengths and interests of our students? How do we build on that? What does that look like? And it's going to mean to be doing things differently. So in this presentation, what we're going to do is we're going to be talking about a 3-phase plan, right? And each phase takes about a week. And again, I know most of your school districts, I'm going to say all of your school districts at this point, are somewhere down this road already. So what we're going to do is, again, as we go through this, I'm hoping that you can kind of check some boxes like, yes, I know that part, or we have that part in place. And maybe there's some pieces that you want to go back and reflect on and say, okay, we have to beef that up, or that is something that we didn't consider that maybe we need to start to consider. So here's how we're going to do this. We're going to break this down into 3 phases. The first phase is making sure you have a solid system or creating your system. Phase 2 is preparing for learning. And then phase 3 is when new learning begins, right? When we start having new learning. And you're probably somewhere around all 3 of those phases at the same time. But when we talk about creating your system, what we really want to focus on is what we're calling our core 4. Now, for this presentation, I'm going to be using a Google Apps Suite world because I know a lot of districts out there use it, but it doesn't have to be. You need to have the system that is in your school already. So in this system, we're looking for a core 4. We need something that I'm calling our home base. A home base is a learning management system or some place that every student is going to go to get their information. And we start rolling that out. And the example that you see on the screen, I would be using Google Classroom for that, but it could be Schoology, it could be Microsoft Teams, it could be Canvas. There's a lot of other tools out there, but you need something that's your home base. Behind that, then, you're going to want something like Google Drive or OneDrive or some cloud-based system to put all the documents and kind of run your system. So if I was sitting at home right now and I was in your shoes, I would grab a piece of paper, I would draw a circle, and what are your core 4? There needs to be a home base. There needs to be something driving that behind it, whether it's Google Drive or OneDrive behind it. And then the other 2 apps are just as important. We need one video app that is for synchronous video. In this image on the screen, we're calling that Google Meets, but that could also be Zoom or Skype, right? So you need a synchronous app so we can actually reach out to our kids and have synchronous conversations with them. We need another app that allows us to do asynchronous videos, that allows us to record video instructions for students and get that loaded into our home base. And on the screen right now, you're looking at Screencastify, one of my favorites, but there's also Screencast-O-Matic, and there's a plethora of them for iPads and iPhones as well. But we need 2 different video apps, one that'll do synchronous and one that'll do really good asynchronous videos. And we're going to get into how we're using this system to drive our learning forward. So if you have your core 4, if your teachers all know the core 4, if your students know what the core 4 is, you're well on your way to being able to have your system set up. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to think differently. We are no longer teaching periods of students. We're teaching them all at once. We have to understand that the idea of school no longer exists. The idea that you're going to go somewhere and you're going to go through classes that are 50 minutes long or 55 minutes long, that is a paradigm that only works in the physical world that we are not held to now, nor should we hold kids to it. In a virtual world, we get to think different. And we are seeing some school districts and teachers start setting this up differently. I have a teacher now who has put all 4 periods of algebra into one Google Classroom. Because why wouldn't you allow a student in period 1 to learn from a student in period 4? And as a teacher, instead of having to answer the same question 4 times like I had to do in the physical world, I answer the question once and all my students see it. I have another teacher from our state who came out and said that she was a band teacher for middle school and high school. She created a Google Classroom that was all of her band kids learning together. Because in the physical world, those kids had to be separate. In the virtual world, they don't have to be. And what if middle school kids get to interact with high school kids around band? What if you took Algebra 1 students and Algebra 2 students and put them in the same Google Classroom? What if your Algebra 2 students could help and support your Algebra 1 students? See, we get to think differently about even the way we structure classes. I have schools out there that have already started and put all of the 8th graders into one Google class to help build community. How are you using your home base to help build community and take some pressure off of teachers that I don't need 4 different periods? I need 120 kids to teach. So we get an opportunity here to even think about the structure of school in a way that maybe we really haven't been able to think about the structure of school in quite a while. The next thing we need to do is we need to set up office hours. And our office hours are here to fulfill the emotional needs of our students first. Now, over time, these office hours are a great place to check in with your kids. Hey, how are you doing on that assignment? Do you have any questions about what we're doing this week? But first and foremost, our office hours are about fulfilling the psychological and safety needs and making sure our kids feel love and belonging. I want to make this very clear. Our office hours, your synchronous video with your students, there should be no new information given during that time. It's a great time to review. It's a great time to ask for clarifying questions. It's a great time to connect with your kids. It's a great time to check in with your students. We have teachers across the state who are now playing Pictionary in their office hour. They're putting online games. Another teacher now is 3 weeks into doing office hours, is now playing Kahoot and is turning that time into learning fun. No new information. Because if you're going to give information in a synchronous way, then every kid would be required to be there. And we are not in a situation in most parts of the state where every student could be there. Even in homes where maybe the child does have a Chromebook, but you don't know if they have siblings that are trying to connect as well. And I just heard yesterday an example from a teacher who is also a parent. They've got one Chromebook and is very frustrated because they're having to choose which student gets to go to the synchronous lesson. And I don't want to put parents in that situation. So our synchronous time is first and foremost relationships. The same thing that we know kids need, that love and belonging. They've got to feel safe before we ever worry of whether or not they're going to do the assignments we hand out. And that's the key to this. And again, that doesn't mean you're not going to review, you're not going to ask questions, but no new information. That's going to take place somewhere else, and we'll talk about that. But we've got to fulfill the psychological needs, and they want to see your face. And the stories coming out, and some of you in the chat and some of you watching this, I know you're already doing this. And the stories around kids just smiling at their teacher, just coming and hanging out. I had a teacher the other day who said she had 20 kids show up and she didn't say a word. They were just talking to each other. What a great office hour, right? Now, you'll notice the last bullet point here becomes very important as well. We want to rotate the time so we give students access. So if you have a family where maybe there's 3 kids in the house and there's only one Chromebook, you don't want to say, hey, I'm going to be 10 a.m. every day, or 10 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday are going to be my office hours, because other kids in that house might need that Chromebook at that time as well. So instead, I was a 4th grade teacher, so I usually use 4th grade examples. For me, I would say, hey, on Mondays, our office hour is at 10 a.m. On Wednesday, our office hour is at 12:30. At Friday, our office hour is at 1. And I'm going to move it around through the week to allow families and kids the opportunity to be able to connect with me, right? And it's those kids, hey, if you happen to be around, you want to connect, feel free, but there's no new information here. If you can't because your older brother or older sister needs to be on, it's okay. It's fine. We'll catch you next time, right? Office hours work to fulfill those needs that before we ever worry about whether or not kids are going to be engaged in the learning we need them to be engaged in. So teachers and admins, here's kind of your assignment in week 1 or phase 1, right? And again, a lot of you are already here. Do you know your core 4? Do you know your core 4? You have that checkbox? Do your teachers know your core 4? Do your kids know your core 4? Know what your core 4 is and make sure you get that information out. Focus on the power of a home base. And we want to make sure that the entire district is using the same home base. We do not want high school using Canvas, middle school using Google Classroom, and elementary using Class Dojo. Because what happens is if you were a parent at home and you have 3 kids at 3 different levels, they can't support each other because they're not using the same platforms. So we want to try and minimize that as much as possible. Now, does that mean that everybody's going to be that way? No. There are some school districts that say, we're using Class Dojo for K2 because that's what's appropriate for K2, and Google Classroom 3 through 12. Fantastic, right? You need to decide what is right for you, but try to keep it to that core 4, right? 4 apps, maybe 5 at most, that is going to be the fundamentals of our continual learning. The last thing then is once you have your core 4 and you know what your home base is, then you need to create a drop schedule. And a drop schedule is where you create a schedule on when is new material going to drop inside your home base. Now, the number 1 complaint we're getting from students and from parents is notification overload. And it doesn't matter what you're using, Schoology or Google Classroom or Canvas, it doesn't matter what home base you're using. They all, if parents and kids are in there, like they should be, it's sending notifications. And yes, parents and kids can turn those off and manage those. The problem is we don't have time to teach them that because we can't take them through a training. So they are in notification overload. So in order to slow that down, what we want to do is we want to create a drop schedule. And what we're going to do then is we're going to communicate to our students and to our families and say, new material will be dropped at 9 a.m. on Monday morning. And that's the only thing that gets put into your Google Classroom, gets put into your home base on Monday. At 1 drop, everything that kids need, 1 time. That's it. Now, that schedule could be for a middle school, high school. Different teachers might be dropping at different days. In the elementary school, what we're seeing is most teachers dropping on Monday and then kids having the entire week with parents to kind of support and figure out what does that schedule look like. But it's critical that we come up with a drop schedule and that we communicate that for our families and our students. Then we need to create a schedule, right? A schedule becomes very important because again, we have to rethink school. School doesn't exist. The physical incarnation of school is gone. So we have to think differently and we get an opportunity to think differently. So the first thing we want to do is we want to look at what OSPI's expectations are. And right now, OSPI's expectations for middle school, high schools is a goal of 3 hours of focused learning per day. That's our aim, not 7 hours, not 50-minute class periods with 5 minutes to get out of a Zoom and get into a new Zoom. Our focus is 3 hours of focused learning. Now, if we have 3 hours, we can look at a schedule that allows kids to go deep in content areas instead of trying to skim across the top. So what you are seeing on your screen now is an example of a middle school, high school schedule that I have been using with school districts as we start to put this together. Now, you don't have to adopt this exact schedule, but let me talk about what are some of the things in the schedule and why it's set up this way. At the middle school, high school level, we are hearing back from students as well that they want a few classes a day so that they can go deep. They can focus on just ELA and science. So the reason why we have the schedule set up this way is first and foremost, we have split ELA and social studies. So ELA on Monday, Tuesday, social studies on Wednesday, Thursday. We do that because we find in general, and it's a big generalization, but they're there for a reason. We find that kids who are ELA and social studies focused are usually not the same kids who are math and science minded. So we want to have a subject on both days or across the week that we can find that kids can tap into as maybe a passion or interest of theirs, right? The subject that they like the best. So we're going to put ELA and science together on Monday and Tuesday, math and social studies, together on Wednesday and Thursday. And then Friday, electives, CTE programs. PE is a little bit different. We're talking about building PE across all the days, getting kids active. We can talk a little bit about that as well. But what this does for a student and for a teacher is we get to slow it down. We get to slow down the flow. And that's the reason why I like using the picture of the Columbia River behind me. Is up until now, we have been in crisis mode, and we've done everything we can, and you have done an amazing job. And yes, we've sent home packets of papers, even though we knew they wasn't the right thing. We just needed to get something out there, right? We needed to get something. 100%. We've been like streams running down the hillsides. But what I want us to do now is I want us to act like the great Grand Columbia. And I want us to just slow down, and I want us to focus. And that's what we allow it to do with a schedule like this. So if I'm an ELA teacher in this schedule, this might be what my week looks like. My drop time is Monday at 9 a.m. So I'm going to drop new material Monday at 9 a.m. I'm then on Monday going to hold an office hour. On Tuesday, no new material drops because I dropped it on Monday, and I'm going to hold a second office hour on Tuesday. Now, I'm done as an ELA teacher as far as communicating with kids. On Wednesday and Thursday, that information starts rolling back in. I'm reaching out to students who need specific help. I might be setting up other meetings with specific groups of kids to help and support them. I'm also preparing for next week. I'm making my videos for next week. I'm making the content or the modules I want kids to work through for the next week. And I'm getting ready for the next week's work, right? So you're not trying to do both at the same time. Math teachers on Monday and Tuesday are preparing their information, getting ready. If I'm a math teacher in this situation, my drop date will be Wednesday at 9 a.m. Kids will be focused on doing math on Wednesday and Thursday. Then on Friday, assignments start slowly rolling in. I'm grading those on Monday and Tuesday. I'm thinking about the next module, and I'm getting ready for my drop date on Wednesday. By creating a schedule like this, not only do we slow it down for kids and we allow kids more time, but we also slow it down for teachers, and we allow teachers to get into a routine that they're not trying to prepare 7 periods a day. Right? Now, when we talk about office hours, I want us to understand that office hours aren't an hour per period. I'm talking 1 hour. And if you teach 120 kids, yes, I want you to invite 120 kids to your office hour. And then the next question I get asked is, what if 120 kids show up? If you get 120 kids to show up to an office hour, you celebrate that. You celebrate that. We haven't seen it happen because kids are everywhere. Families are different. We're not seeing getting an entire class online is really difficult. If that happens and you break the system, congratulations. That is a feat to aim for. I love that idea. But yeah, we want all the kids in there. We want to create community. We want every kid to be able to ask questions, answer questions. And you only have to answer a question once, and all the kids that happen to be there get to hear the answer. Right? So we're trying to slow it down. Now here in this, the way that you would think about this as a teacher, middle school, high school teacher, if I'm an ELA teacher, I'm looking at 3 hours of focused learning a week. On Monday, I know I've got about an hour and a half. On Tuesday, I've got about an hour for ELA, hour for science, and an hour for world language. So as an ELA teacher, I'm looking at, I've got about 2.5 hours a week of time that I want kids to engage in ELA material. The same would be for science, about 2 hours for world languages, and then electives get their hour and a half on the Friday or the weekend. And you notice here, I said Friday or the weekend. We have to understand kids are going to create their own schedule at home when they work on this stuff. This schedule is, here's when your information is going to drop, here are when our office hours are. And by splitting this up, we also help those office hours to be spread out. Our goal is that we do not want students to be in more than 2 office hours a day. We do not want students to be on 7 Zoom meetings a day, because if you're on Zoom meetings, as many of you are finding out, you can't get your work done. You can't do the work we need you to do. So we want you on 2 Zoom meetings a day. That's your goal as a district. If you can figure out a schedule that allows kids to only have 2 Zoom meetings a day, fantastic, you're on the right track. For elementary, we're again, start with the OSPI's recommendations. And those recommendations right now are on the screen for you: about 30 minutes for pre-KK, 45 minutes for K grade 1, 60 minutes 2 and 3, and 90 minutes 4 or 5. And we're also looking at, again, slowing it down and having a rotational schedule. Again, just an example on the screen, you might come up with one that works for you. What we are finding works in the elementary is having one drop day for the week. So coming up with a schedule for your kids and then saying on Monday morning at 9 a.m., I'm going to drop the week's schedule. Parents are also saying they like that because parents then can get that information, figure out how they're working their family schedule behind the scenes in this crisis to make sure that they have an opportunity to support their children in learning. So we are seeing that this idea of one drop a week is working in elementary. Then elementary school teachers, you might be having 2 office hours. You might have one on Monday and Wednesday, or you might choose to do yours on Tuesday, Thursday, or you might mix and move it around. As long as you are putting that in the schedule, when you drop that schedule on Monday, you're saying, hey, this week my office hours at Monday at 10 and Tuesday at 1, or whatever happens to work for you, your schedule, as you are in this pandemic as well with everyone else. So that's the idea. Again, so if I'm a 4th grade teacher, I have 90 minutes. So on Monday, I'm looking at 30 minutes of a reading writing activity, 30 minutes of a math activity, and 30 minutes of science. Or I'm starting to think in bigger interdisciplinary projects. I'm starting to think of how do I wrap some of these together and create some really nice learning experiences for my students in some big idea projects. But you don't have to. You can split them out, or you can kind of think in interdisciplinary projects. And we're going to look at a couple examples of those in just a second. The last thing then for phase 1 in creating your system is make sure you are supporting each other as a team. Schools and school districts who are moving together are moving faster. We need to be supporting each other. We all have our psychological and safety needs need to be met as well before we ever are allowed to unleash our creative mind to create creative stuff. So my recommendation, you should be still having PLC meetings and make sure you're checking in with each other. You should be meeting as a team of 4th grade or a team of 3rd grade at least twice a week in the first week of this to kind of get the motor running. When is our drop date? Do we have a schedule that works? How are we feeling about this? How's your office hours going? How many kids are showing up to your office hours, right? What are things you can do at your office hours? And what are some protocols you can have in synchronous meetings that you can use with students, right? So that becomes important. I hope you have that set up already at your school. I hope you've already been meeting with all of your colleagues and supporting each other at the school level, as well as at your team or department level as well. Then we're going to go into phase 2. Phase 2 is, again, about another week. What we want to do is the first thing we're going to start putting into our home base is we're going to welcome kids back to our classroom. We have to pretend that it's almost the first day of school. And so a lot of this is going to be, welcome, how are you doing? Good to see you back here. Hey, before we went into virtual school, do you remember what we were doing? Maybe you're going to post some review material, right? Your goal is to make a video for your students to see and hear you. And that's where you're going to use your asynchronous app, not your office hour, but Screencastify or Screenomatic. You're going to create a video that introduces you back to your students. And it's so important. Kids want to see your face. And when we make a video, they don't have to be in the office hour. They can watch you whenever they get a chance to watch you. They can watch you at 10 o'clock at night. They can watch you at 7:30 in the morning. That's the power of asynchronous video, and we're going to get into that. But as a teacher, my first video might go something like this. Hi, guys. It's Mr. Yu. So glad to be back here with you. I hope you and your family are safe and sound. Do you remember before we went into virtual school, I was constantly talking about my cat. This is my cat, right? I was constantly talking about my wife. I'd introduce you to my wife, right? I'm so excited that we're back learning together. Hey, remember to check your Google Classroom every Monday at 9. So that's when our new information is going to be. Be looking for more videos like this, because this is how we're going to be giving you new instructions and be talking about the things we're going to be learning for the rest of the year. I can't wait to see your face again next year. But in the meantime, stay safe, and I'll see you at our office hour. That might be my first video to my kids, right? No new learning. I'm just reintroducing myself, having that energy you have in the classroom, whatever that might look like. So we need to get that video out to kids if we haven't already. We then also try to hold our first office hour. What kids show up? And this is the stories coming out around office hour I love. I had a teacher the other day who was telling me she held her first office hour and one student showed up. 3 weeks later, she's getting somewhere around 80% of her kids to come to the office hour. And that's the power of this. Yes, your first office hour, one kid might show up, 5 kids might show up. I don't know how many kids are going to show up. But over time, we start new routines. And when kids have routines, then they start to engage. And you notice the last thing here, week 2 is all about engagement. Engagement, engagement, engagement. Middle school, high school principals. How are you using your social media hashtags? We talked about this in one of the sessions with admin I was running the other day. You've got kids who are out on social media. How are you bringing them together? How are you seeing what they are posting around a hashtag? Can we create a community in their space? We have to invite student culture into our schools. What a great opportunity to do that. So how are you reaching out to them where they are and engaging them so that we can bring them back and know that we are here to support them, that we love them, and that school is moving forward? The other thing we have to do is we have to start understanding how to make good instructional videos. And that's where we're going to use the app Screencastify or Screenomatic. These are asynchronous videos. So I'm not doing this in real time. I'm doing this, and then I'm going to post this video in Google Classroom, Schoology, whatever my home base is. There's a lot of research. The research is down in the links around this. It's incredible what we are learning. And here's what I love about this. This isn't about distance learning. This is just good teaching in 2020. This is starting to understand that we have a different brain. We are teaching a media first generation. And there's a whole other keynote I do about that. Don't have time for that today. But we're teaching a media first generation, and video speaks to them. And there's research out there now that shows that video works. Video works in giving directions and instructions to kids. Here's what some of the research says. This is research out of Vanderbilt, which you can find in the links at the end of this slideshow. But the first thing we have to understand is our videos are no longer than 6 minutes. Actually, 3 to 5 minutes is the golden spot. So your videos of new instructional material for your students need to be asynchronous so that they can watch them anytime, any place. And they have to be between 3 and 5 minutes long. Now, I had a teacher the other day said, okay, well, I'm an algebra teacher. It takes me at least 15 minutes to walk kids through this equation. Fantastic. What we're going to do then is, and the research, it's weird. This is the human brain. The human brain says we would rather watch 3 5-minute videos than 1 15-minute video when it comes to instruction. We want it chunked down, which is why when you go to YouTube to learn something new, you look for the time of the video and you will skip over a video that can explain something in 30 minutes and watch the video that'll explain something in 3 minutes, because that's about the time we want for instructional videos. So if I'm a teacher, and I know it's going to take me 15 minutes to get through this algebraic equation, I'm going to make a video that's about 3 to 5 minutes long, but there's going to be an action at the end of the video. So, hey, here's the first part of the equation. Now, what I'd like you to do is at the end of this video, you're going to go and you're going to work through the first part of the equation. Once you've got that far, then you're going to come back and watch video number 2. And then the start of video number 2, the teacher says, did you do it? Did you get through the first part? Awesome. All right, here's where we're going to go now. Watch first, and then you're going to pause me, or this will be the second version, and then you're going to go do again. So I work you through the next version. All right, you're going to go get that far. When you get back, watch video number 3. So you can still have a 15-minute video. They're going to be chunked in 3-minute parts. And the reason why asynchronous video works, the reason why it works, and again, this has nothing to do with distance learning or virtual learning. This just has to do with good teaching in 2020. Because when we make asynchronous videos, we give the pace of learning over to students, right? We give the pace. When I'm talking like this on a YouTube Live, you don't own the pace. You don't own the pace of which information is coming at you. I own the pace. I'm owning the pace of information. If I talk faster or slower, I'm deciding at what pace the information is coming at you. But when we make a video and we allow kids to watch it, when they're in the right mindset, when they're in the right space, we allow them to control the pace of which learning happens. They can pause it, they can rewatch it 100 times, they can fast forward, they can rewind. It's incredible what happens when we give control, ownership of learning to students. And one of the ways you can do that is through giving them ownership of pace. Understand we're teaching a media first generation. Your students love and want to see you. The research behind your face on the screen is unbelievable. Yes, you can go use a Khan Academy video. They're fantastic. But if it is that child's teacher teaching them with the expressions that you use in the classroom, with the way you explain things, your voice, your facial expressions, we see learning increase. And that's the power of every teacher knowing how to make asynchronous videos. If we learn nothing else during this time, this is my hope, is that we understand the power of this. And when we do get back to a school, back to a traditional school, we are in a blended learning format where we are using the power of video for teaching, right? And it allows you to meet the individual needs of your students. I can make one video for 6 kids. I can make one video for 1 kid. I have a kid on an IEP or a kid that's on a 504 plan. I can make a video exactly for that kid with the accommodations that only that kid sees. And it's their teacher giving them those directions. It's so powerful, right? Now, on the opposite side, we want kids to be making videos for us. We have to think outside this idea of paper or essays or how we can grade something. We have to start thinking in video, because if there's one piece of technology that a family has at home, it's going to be a camera. If you have one cell phone in a house, you have 2 cameras. If you have 2 cell phones in a house, you now have 4 cameras. So we have more cameras in these houses than we have any single piece of technology. In fact, there are some school districts who are sending home PDFs for kids to print, and there is a better chance that there is a camera in that house than there is a printer. So we have to think differently. And we want kids making videos to turn in their assignment. Because when students make videos to turn in their assignments, we, the teachers, get to assess the process of learning, not the product of learning. When you get to hear a kid talk through an equation, when you get to hear a kid explain their thinking, you know exactly what misconception is in the brain. And you are hearing the process of learning taking place. And again, this is just good teaching. This is where we're at. We have to figure out ways, and we now have the tools that we can actually assess the process of learning, not the product of that which was learned. And that is a switch we're going to see continuing to going forward, regardless of whether we're here or back in a new blended learning format. You get to hear and see it, and we get to take advantage of this brain. Now, we also, in week 2, want to start thinking about how we're setting up systems to help kids support us. And we need to, again, give up some control. So this is something that I think is fantastic. I would be using this at minimum grades 4 through 12. I think even 3rd graders could do this. And I wanted to take you out of my slideshow and show you what this is. This is actually a Google Sheet, but you could do this in Excel as well if that's your platform, that a teacher set up, and she was already using this in her classroom before they went distance learning. But I think it works for distance learning as well. And here's what it is. It is a grade sheet where she has set this up and she has shared this with all of her students. So every student has access to this. The students tell the teacher what they are working on. So the students come in here and get to say, oh yeah, I'm working on this one. I finished this one. I am working on this one, and I haven't started that one yet. Across the top, teachers can say what each one of these are. So maybe you're handing out a choice grid for students. You could, up here at the cross where it says 1A, 1B, 1C, could be maybe the different choices of the choice grid. Kids would tell you which ones they're working on or which ones they finished. Over here to the left, because every kid has access to this, over here to the left, kids can say, hey, I'm all good, teach, or hey, I need some help. And when a student changes this, then you can reach out to them via email or text message or however you're meeting out to your kids and say, hey, what do you need some help on? Where are you stuck? Let me help you and support you. Or maybe a kid's going to say, hey, can you check on me? Right? Students help us take control and see where they're at. What a great idea for setting up a system. So again, kids are supporting us. Now as a teacher, I'm going to come into my tracking sheet. I'm going to see where all of my students are. How are they doing through the week? If there's a kid that student number 6 here hasn't done anything yet, I might need to go reach out to student number 6. And we know then we've got a system where kids are supporting us. Kids are able to check something off, which we know is another great feeling in life. When I can come in here and say, I'm finished with the project, it just helps everybody. You will see, you can download that and make a copy for yourself at the link at the bottom of the screen here. And if you've downloaded the presentation or you're looking at the presentation, which again is in the description of this YouTube, you should be able to click on that. You can make a copy of this if you're in a Google platform. And there are 2 videos there where the teacher that created this walks you through how you can protect some of the cells. So for example, kids can't change each other's names. Watch a couple videos and download and make a copy of the sheet, and you're off and running and having kids support you in doing the work. Then after we've got systems set up, after we're ready to go, we're engaged kids. We've got kids back engaged in the system. Now it's time for new learning to begin. And the questions I want us asking ourselves are these. How am I taking advantage of my new reality? How am I taking advantage of real world scenarios? Our kids are stuck in the real world. How are we taking advantage of that fact? How are we bringing our content area or what we need kids to do to life because they're stuck out there? And that's the creative spirit that we need as teachers. This is why being unleashed from your curriculum is going to be an incredible time period to rethink about all the things that you know are possible. And we get to do those now. We get to think differently. We get to engage kids in fun activities. I want you to be thinking to yourself, how am I using the world as my curriculum? Especially if you have students who are on the internet. If you have students who you know have a device and have access to the internet, literally the world is your curriculum, right? How can you have students collaborate across time and space? Are you having your students collaborate together? Collaborating across time and space was a critical skill before this. I can only imagine how powerful of a skill is it going to be to know how to collaborate across time and space. How are you respectful in a chat room? Do you know how to put an @ when you're responding to somebody in a chat room because different conversations are going on and we want to respond to somebody in a specific conversation? And of course, be thinking of video, video, video. Can kids take a picture of their learning? Can kids take a picture of shapes? Can kids take a picture of something and turn that in? Can kids create a quick video, right? Can a drama teacher have their students maybe write a quick play where mom and dad and younger siblings have to be the actors and actresses and the kid is going to become a producer, right? And video that and turn that in, right? Or do we start thinking in large interdisciplinary projects? And not at first, but we've got some time. We've got an entire month at least left. How are we thinking big? And just be thinking about that as we continue to go down this role. Now, I wanted to show you some examples that are already coming out and some things that you can go back and look at as we get ready to finish this up here. So I wanted to show you, this is Shannon. Shannon is a 4th grade teacher from Enumclaw, and this was her first video to her kids. So she used Screencastify, first time virtual learning. She gets up in the morning, she's still in her pajamas, she's got her coffee cup, and she makes a video for her kids, reintroducing herself to her kiddos, saying, you know, I really miss you. I wish we could be together, but we can't. So here's our new reality, right? Please be safe, and you can watch the video. Fantastic job of just that first video that you want to get your kids out there and make them smile and let them know that you care and you are here for them. Then Shannon started to think in big projects. So Shannon built this. This is a week project for a 4th grade classroom. She decided to think for herself, what if the world was my curriculum? My kids are stuck in the real world. How can I cover my standards? Thinking in terms of what kids have access to. Another mindset or another question we can ask ourselves as teacher, what was it that I found fun as a kid? And what was the learning involved? So Shannon decided to have a fort building challenge where kids got to build forts out of pillows and cushions and blankets and whatever you have around your house. They then had to measure the perimeter. They had to write instructions of how they made the house, or how they made their fort so somebody else could make the fort, right? They had to do all these activities around the standards, but they got to build a fort because kids like to build forts, right? And here's her drop on the next slide. This is her drop Monday morning, 9 a.m. She drops the instructions. Notice everything that kids need are tied, right? And then for an entire week, students are going to build a fort. The only rule is you do not get to buy anything. You can build it inside your house. You can build it outside your house. We're building forts, right? Take a picture or draw a picture of your fort. Can you measure the perimeter of your fort? Right? An entire week of learning and kids are having fun. That idea of what was it that I loved to do as a kid and what was the learning involved. And then figure out what standards can you tie to that? What essential learning tying into kids' passions and interests is what OSPI says. So how do we tie into their interests and passions? Here's another one. This is another elementary example, but again, a little bit smaller. Teaching time. You see on the top of this, the teacher has created their video. This is their asynchronous video that a student can watch anytime they want. Here are the steps that the student must do. And then the student takes a picture of them telling time with a couple Q-tips and a piece of paper. Right? Simple activity. Kids can do at home. Asynchronous video. A great little module of learning that was set up here. Now, for your students who aren't connected, we need to be thinking about how we engage them as well. And when we talk about asynchronous video, we make asynchronous videos because it gives students control over the pace. When we're talking about our students who aren't going to be online with us, we still need to give them some control. And that control is going to be the control of path. Right? There are 4 ways you give a student control over their learning: pace, path, place, or time. Those are the 4 ways that we give students control over learning. When you use choice grids, and I know a lot of people are using these, which is fantastic. When you use a choice grid, you are giving students control over the path. This one happens to be made by Tyler Rablin, who I believe is in the chat room. You can chat to him about it if you want. This is an ELA, high school ELA choice grid. And you notice up here at the top, because the kids do not have internet access, he's just having the parent or guardian initial it. The parent or guardian just initials. What boxes did you do? Learn something you've always wanted to learn. Spend 1 hour outside away from technology. Down here at the bottom, write a story that starts with the following line: I never expected it to turn out this way. Right? Still thinking about what are the enduring understandings? What do you want to do to engage students? And giving students choice over the path that learning occurs. Now, we know choice grids work. We know choice grids work because especially teenagers like to have choices. They like their independence, and they're creating them anyways. These are 2 choice grids that I stole from my other goddaughter, who's a freshman, that she has on her Instagram account. The one on the left is a 30-day challenge where she has to come up with a song that meets that day's challenge. That's a type of giving control of path, right? You get to choose the song that meets the challenge. So the next one here is a song that makes you think about life would be her next challenge. So she has to go into this critical thinking, high cognitive load of all the songs she knows. She's going to go listen to a bunch of lyrics of songs to figure out what song meets that need. I want kids in that space. I want kids in that headspace. The one on the right is a quarantine bingo. And I actually told my goddaughter, I was like, hey, just to let you know, I took screenshots of this off your Instagram because any follower can, good digital citizenship lesson. And I'm going to be sharing this with teachers. And she wrote back to me, she said, well, make sure you tell them that I made it. So my goddaughter has made her own choice grid and called it a bingo card and then sent it out to her friends, and her friends are playing a choice grid. Kids love choices. So if we're going for our kids who are offline, who can't be engaged in all of the amazing things we can do with technology, and I know they're out there, are we giving them choices within the assignment? Are we giving them different ways to meet the needs? And that's powerful. Choice grids work, and they work really well. Here's another one I found. They're all over the internet right now. This one was shared. This was a STEAM one. And the idea behind this one is again, science, technology, engineering, art, and math across the top. And in a week, drop this on Monday. And the idea is in a week, you need to do 2 from each column. That's it. 2. And we know this works, especially in elementary school, because in elementary school, we know that parents are taking on a very active role in helping their students. And so if you are sending out choice grids, even at the youngest of levels, you're giving parents some choices too. Parents get to come in here and say, oh, you know what, that would be kind of fun to do. Oh, I think we can do that. Oh, that would be kind of fun to do with my kid. And so not only are we giving students choices over what activities to do, but we're giving parents over what can they support, what do they feel comfortable with, and helping meet the needs of their child. Choice grids work for everybody. Now, at another level, we have teachers like this. This is a world language teacher. She happens to be a French teacher. She teaches at the International School of Luxembourg, where I happened to be when we went into closed down in Luxembourg. I was helping them go to virtual school and then flew back here, and here we are here. But she decided that she was going to focus on, from a world language standpoint, she was going to focus on the idea of culture. So she is taking her kids on a tour of all the French-speaking countries around the world. So she found a way with her iPad. She got a green screen at home. I don't know how she got this all set up. She's on her iPad, and she takes kids to different countries that speak French. You can see down here that she embeds that video into a Google form and then asks kids different questions. So they have to listen to the French language. They have to pick up on context clues of what country she happens to be visiting. I've put the link there to her YouTube playlist where she's putting all of these in there. So you can see my favorite part is teachers trying stuff. That's my favorite part of this. Just give it a go. And it's not going to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect. And that's okay. Kids don't expect you to be perfect. My favorite one, if you go click on that link, the very first video that she made, she didn't know exactly where it was set up. So you see the whole time, you see like half her face, right, on the screen, because she didn't have it right. And she didn't edit it. She just uploaded it. The kids didn't care. This is the third one. They're trapped at home, her and her family. So now her husband shows up in this one. Her kids are in them, right? This has become, for this teacher, it's become a family thing of creating the next video for her kiddos. Just another way that we can engage kids. And I want us to take advantage of some of the incredible stuff, especially if you have kids that are connected to the internet that are out there. But don't forget about places like Google Earth. You know, Google Earth is now all online. You don't have to download an app, and it is incredible. Or even if kids just have a phone, Google Maps on a phone, you can turn on satellite view and have kids explore this world in unbelievable ways. And inside Google Earth, if you go to Google Earth, on the left-hand side, once you get there, you will see a ship's wheel. And when you roll over it, they're called voyages. And voyages are already stories, pre-made mapping stories that kids can go and view. There's a whole educational channel within there. Also in there, you will see layers. Science teachers, there are layers about water temperature and storms and past of the last hurricanes. Social studies teachers, there are layers of old maps that you can put over top of the earth and see what, say, London looked like in the 1700s. It's so many reasons. Don't forget that these things exist, and kids love looking at Google Earth. We all love looking at Google Earth. It's an incredible resource. Have kids go in there and measure. There's a measuring tool. What's the distance between your house and your school, right? All kinds of beautiful ways. Don't forget some of these beautiful activities that are out there that engage kids. But here's what I want us to walk away with. I want us to walk away with the understanding that not doing anything is far worse than trying to do something. You're not going to do it perfect the first time, and that's okay. We've just got to try, and we've got to start somewhere. So we're going to put some stuff out there, and maybe you already have. Maybe you've already sent home some packets of worksheets. Fantastic. Good job. We tried something. Now let's run that up. What's the next thing we're going to try? Are we going to do choice grids? What's the next thing we can try? Are we going to start making some asynchronous videos to engage those kids in a new learning way? So we have to try something and continue to feed ourselves in our own professional development. Do not wait for your district to come out and say, we're going to give training on this. You need to be able to feed yourself. And youtube.com is your best friend. All over YouTube, there are teacher videos of teachers teaching teachers of how to use all of these incredible apps. So many great ways that we can support each other. And I want you to remember to ask yourself this question: what if the world was my curriculum? How would you structure learning for your kids? What kind of modules would you create if you thought in the terms of what if the world was my curriculum? Now, through the ESDs of Washington, the Association of ESDs, we are rolling out 2 different ways we are trying to support school districts. And this is going out to all the ESDs across the state. And you will find links to both of these in the description below this video. For administrators, we are looking at 6 sessions. So 2 sessions a week, I believe. Maybe it's 1 session a week. I can't remember now. It's all there. We're looking at 6 sessions that are going to be focused on action items to move your district forward. We're also going to be talking about maybe planning virtual graduations. What does that look like? How are you engaging people on social media? How are you telling your district story? As well as building routines. Do you know your core four? What is your schedule? We'll be going through that. And we'll be helping you create your distance learning system. So we are here to support you. We know that every district is in a different space. So our goal is to come together, figure out where you are, and how can we support you moving forward. That's the goal. We know that everybody's already down this road. Our goal is to get everybody flowing in the same direction, answer your critical questions that you might have, and find a way to support you in your school district. Educators, we have created 2 different strands for you, depending on what you might want to do. The first strand will give you 4 sessions over 2 weeks, so it's very intense. And it's going to start next week. Registration for this actually ends Sunday night, so you need to register pretty quickly. 4 sessions over 2 weeks. And it's going to be focused on getting your core 4 set up, getting your information out there, making sure you have a schedule, you know your drop. Do you need any professional development around your core 4? How do you make a great asynchronous videos? We're going to cover all of that to kind of get you going in 2 weeks, and then you're done. Or if you would like, we have also a 10-session option, because what we are hearing from a lot of educators is, I would love a mentor and a critical friend through the rest of this journey together. And so our hope is that through the ESDs, we can come together as teachers across the state, support each other, be each other's critical friends, and learn together, because teaching and learning is going to be forever different after this. So what you're going to get if you want this one is you're going to get focused action items, things you're going to walk away from. You're going to get support through the entire crisis to the end of the school year. We're going to be focused on skills of the future, you making videos, kids turning in videos. What do good learning modules look like in a blended classroom? We're going to be focused on creating learning modules to support learning. You're going to actually be doing some learning modules, and then we will be creating learning modules. We'll be breaking those down. Why do they work? What might they work? And then help you create some for your students as well. So that's the idea. Those are ways that we can support you if you're looking for support around these ideas I've shared today. Here are some more links for you if you'd like to go out and find some more. Here are 2 blog posts that I wrote over at my blog, The Thinking Stick. Please check in if you're a podcast listener. Shifting Our Schools podcast comes out weekly, and the last at least 5 sessions have been all around, specifically focused on our state, things that school districts are doing around virtual or distance learning. There are some other ones here. This Vanderbilt EDU is around the idea of asynchronous videos and the power in them, and how do you make good ones. We'll be using that in our education strand as well. There's an academic paper, a peer-reviewed article that I wrote just about a year ago that focuses on the learning theory behind this, which is called the connectivism learning theory that we all need to be moving to, and other resources here as well. I've also just got some other slides in here that I found. How do you structure a good video, digital video mini lesson? What might a design look like for remote learning lesson design? So that's that. That's where we're at. I hope that some of you decide that you would like to have a critical friend through this journey, that you would like to have some support as we rethink what teaching and learning is and is going to be throughout this crisis as we support each other. Thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you for everything you've already done. I know your students really appreciate it. Your families really appreciate it. And stay safe and stay healthy. And hopefully I'll see you in one of those cohorts.